welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a question that I think is pretty fundamental to, human nature. And when you really look at the science behind it, it's kind of astonishing. How does a momentary flicker of emotion like a frustrating text message, a bad memory, or even just a fleeting 90-second stress trigger, how does that manage to become a fixed part of who you are?
It really does sound almost philosophical, doesn't it? Like, how does a bad mood become your entire identity? But the sources we've gathered for today, they actually provide an exact neurochemical blueprint for how this happens. So our mission in this deep dive is to analyze that whole escalation process. We're tracking the moment a temporary chemical state solidifies into a permanent personality trait.
So it's conditioning.
It's pure neurological and biochemical conditioning.
Okay, so we're basically mapping the journey. We're going from, say, a quick rush of cortisol after you get cut off in traffic.
Yeah, a classic example.
To, years later, you're defining yourself as someone who just has road rage or generalized anxiety. And that's not just a change in perspective. That feels like a biological commitment.
It is, absolutely. Because when we talk about personality in this context, we're really simplifying it down to three specific repeatable things. It's how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And our analysis shows that when those three things become redundant, automatic, and mostly unconscious, well, that's when the temporary feeling becomes a permanent identity.
And we're going to detail the mechanisms that make that happen.
That's the plan.
All right, so let's unpack this using the timeline that the sources lay out. We should probably start with that initial shock, right? If I get genuinely startled or I get a piece of really upsetting news, I feel that rush of acute stress. If I manage to, step away, take a breath, why doesn't that feeling just vanish on its own? Is there like a literal chemical clock on this?
There absolutely is a chemical clock. And this is the first crucial fact that I think really surprises people. The acute chemical release, the adrenaline, the cortisol dump that you feel with genuine stress or fear, it is incredibly short-lived. We're talking approximately 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes max.
Wait, only 2 minutes?
That's the actual lifespan of those biochemical signals released in that moment of crisis.
Okay, if that's true then, I've definitely had feelings of dread or anger that have lasted for hours or even days. Where is all that sustained emotional energy coming from if the original event is over?
And that is the critical distinction. See, if the external event resolves itself and you allow those stress chemicals to just metabolize and clear out within that 90-second window, the response is actually non-harmful. It can even be beneficial. It helps improve your resilience because your body just returns to its natural balance.
So the body's actually designed to snap right back, like hitting a reset button.
Precisely. The initial blast isn't the problem. It's just your body's defense system doing its job. The real danger zone starts after that 2-minute mark. If the stress, what the sources call survival mode, if that continues beyond the initial burst, the body never resets. It just stays primed.
And that's the trigger for all the chronic issues.
That's the physiological trigger. And if the actual chemicals from the event are gone, then something else has to be generating them to keep that stress response alive. It can't be the original traffic jam anymore. That's long over.
Right, so it has to be coming from inside.
Exactly. We have to look inward. And what's really fascinating here is that the sources suggest the whole point of, say, mindfulness or other healing practices is at a cellular level just to overcome the body's dependency on those specific stress chemicals. You're trying to finally let that natural balance return. It's just a huge uphill battle because you're fighting a system that you keep re-triggering yourself.
Okay, let's get right into that re-triggering mechanism, because this sounds like the engine that turns a mood into an identity. If the chemical release is gone in 90 seconds, what happens right after that to keep the emotion going? What's sustaining it?
This brings us right to the core mechanism of the whole thing, the continuous thinking-feeling loop. And the escalation starts with what we can call the initial lock.
Okay, lay out that initial lock for us.
So imagine a highly charged event. It doesn't even have to be a huge trauma. It could be something as small as a critical comment from a boss.
Or just a thought.
Or just an internal thought, exactly, like, I'm worried I forgot to lock the front door. That initial thought or experience immediately triggers a biochemical reaction in your brain. The brain releases these chemical signals, peptides, that travel all through the body, and they cause the body to feel exactly the way the person was just thinking.
So the thought is the electrical trigger, and the feeling is the chemical response.
You got it. The emotion is the biochemical residue, you could say. It's the consequence of that thought. If the thought was guilt, now your body is literally saturated with the chemistry of guilt. If it was fear, it's saturated with fear chemistry.
That makes total sense for the first reaction. But I guess this is where the loop has to kick in to keep it going, right?
This is where it gets really interesting because it becomes self-perpetuating. As soon as that feeling starts, once your body is full of the feeling of, let's say, frustration, that chemical state immediately influences you to generate more thoughts that are equal to that feeling. Your body is sending signals back to your brain, basically demanding more of that chemical reinforcement.
Oh, wow. So if I feel shame, my body is chemically telling my brain, hey, we need more thoughts that make us feel shame.
Hmm.
And then my brain just dutifully serves up memories of every embarrassing thing I've ever done.
That is the thinking-feeling loop in action. The feeling creates thoughts, which then create more of the same feeling, and around it goes. And this can all happen in a matter of seconds. It's this continuous, self-powering chemical conversation between the brain and the body. By doing this, you're biologically reinforcing that original reaction over and over again, keeping the stress alive way past its 90-second expiration date.
So the moment that loop starts, we're basically conditioning the body to live in the past. We're forcing it to recreate the chemical reality of that first reaction.
Yeah.
Which I think brings us to part 3, where the body, well, it kind of takes over and makes this whole loop permanent. You mentioned there's a fundamental flaw in the system that lets this happen.
Yes, and this is the critical piece. The
Yeah.
flaw is in how the body processes information. Your body operates as the objective mind, or you could call it the unconscious mind. And this mind, it's nonverbal, it's not analytical, and crucially, it cannot distinguish between a real-life external event and the memory or the thought of that event.
That distinction is everything. So if I'm just sitting here, perfectly safe, but I'm intensely reliving an argument I had yesterday, my body doesn't register the difference between my comfy chair and the actual argument.
Zero difference. If you are generating the thoughts and the emotional signals of that past argument, your body responds by producing the same stress chemistry that the real event triggered. As far as your body is concerned, that past event is happening right now. And that's consequence number 1. Chronic chemistry. The chemical signals never stop because the internal thought signals never stop feeding the body.
That is terrifying. It means we're forcing our bodies into a constant state of emergency based purely on our own thoughts.
And if that chemistry is flowing all the time, we run straight into consequence number 2, emotional addiction. The body is an incredible machine. It's built for efficiency. So when it gets a consistent signal, it adapts. It starts to recognize and then eventually crave the familiar chemicals produced by that stress response.
So it's not even that the body is addicted to the feeling of anger, but to the specific hormonal cocktail that anger creates.
Yes. It becomes chemically addicted to those emotions, whether it's anger, victimhood, self-pity, whatever it is. For the body, this familiar stress chemistry becomes its new normal, its new homeostatic baseline, even if that baseline is completely pathological. So the body starts to kind of secretly look for ways to generate the thoughts it needs to maintain that chemical supply.
It's like the body hijacks the mind. It's not the mind controlling the body anymore. The body is chemically pressuring the mind to keep thinking the thoughts it needs to keep the faucet on.
That is a perfect way to describe it. It's biological entrapment. And since emotions are basically a chemical record of the past, they represent the experience you just had, if you are constantly generating the chemistry of yesterday's problems, you are continuously thinking in the past. You can't think thoughts about a new future that are greater than how you constantly feel.
And that repetition, it doesn't just feel bad. It's literally anchoring your body and your brain to that same past experience, 200/7.
It is. Over time, the body is so conditioned that it becomes the mind of that emotion. The person has unconsciously defined themselves by that stressor, and they carry that chemical imprint with them everywhere.
So we're wiring ourselves to live in memory. And when that loop becomes the default, when it's just maintained by sheer repetition, that's when we hit the final state. That's when the mood officially becomes a habit and therefore a fixed part of our personality.
Exactly. We've moved from a temporary state to a permanent structure. And a habit, in this context, is defined as a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. It's the fully programmed response that no longer requires any conscious effort.
So we're not just talking about, like, biting your nails. We're talking about habitually feeling victimized, habitually reacting with anger, or habitually just assuming things will go wrong.
Yes. And this redundancy It triggers a profound change in the brain. This constant thinking, feeling loop doesn't just repeat a behavior. It literally hardwires the brain into the same fixed patterns. Every single time you run that loop, you are firing and wiring the same neural circuits over and over. You're creating superhighways for those specific thoughts and emotional reactions.
That old saying,
Yeah.
neurons that fire together, wire together, becomes very, very literal here.
It's the mechanism.
Yeah.
Which leads us to maybe the most memorable detail from the sources. We just need to zoom out for a second and look at the whole person.
Okay, hit us with the statistic that defines this endpoint.
The sources suggest that by the time a person reaches their mid-30s, the vast majority of their thoughts, their reflexive emotional reactions, their unconscious habits, all of it is so deeply habituated that 95% of who they are is a subconscious program.
95%. That means the vast majority of our choices and our feelings are dictated by programs from our past, running completely under our conscious awareness. That's staggering.
It means that on a good day, maybe 5% of your existence is conscious effort or novelty or free will actually directed toward change. And that's the powerful conclusion of this arc. The person's new identity, their personality, is created by this chemical fixation on the past because 95% of the time they are automatically thinking, acting, and feeling the same way, as if that initial 2-minute event were still happening.
Okay, so what does this all mean for someone listening who is trying to change? Let's just synthesize this whole process one more time. The full journey from a 90-second mood to a 95% programmed personality.
The synthesis is that a temporary mood escalates into a fixed personality when the mind repeatedly feeds the body the chemical signal of that emotion through that thinking-feeling loop. The body, since it can't tell the difference between reality and thought, becomes chemically addicted to the chemistry of the past.
And because the body, which is mostly subconscious, doesn't know the difference, it's the one that forces the repetition. The body insists on recreating the chemical state it knows.
Exactly. It ensures the mind keeps generating the thoughts necessary to support that state. And if you constantly condition your subconscious body to feel sadness or guilt through this loop, the sum total of all of those repetitive unconscious processes is your personality.
Yeah.
It's not a random reaction anymore. It's your identity.
Which means breaking free requires a conscious effort that feels really uncomfortable because you're literally breaking a biological addiction.
You are.
This whole deep dive has, it's really changed how I view something as simple as resilience. It suggests that when you just pause before reacting to something stressful or you choose a different thought,
Yeah.
you're not just practicing positive thinking. You're literally giving your body the 2 minutes it needs to metabolize those stress chemicals and reset the whole system before that addictive loop can even start.
That's the key application. And that raises a final, maybe provocative thought for you to consider. If 95% of our identity is an automatic, subconscious program that is anchored entirely in the chemistry of past events in memory, then what specific conscious actions must we deliberately choose today to ensure that the tiny 5% of our conscious self is focused exclusively on creating a future identity that is not built on yesterday's chemical reactions?
A question that definitely demands intention. Thank you for guiding us through this,
Yes.
this astonishing neurochemical blueprint.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep digging deep.